This video is for integrated 2 MA. This is a chapter 4 MA. Homework number 6, double the love. This is the non-calculator section. So for this, we want to figure out the degrees that are equivalent to this. So 5 pi thirds is going to be right there. And that is going to be 300 degrees. Negative 5 pi 6, negative 5 pi 6, we're going this direction, and negative 5 pi 6 is going to be right here, and that is going to be 210 degrees. On letter C, this is 7 pi fourths, which is going to be right here, and that is going to be 315 degrees. Now we're going to the other direction. We're going to find the radian for this. So for the first one, 135 degrees, 135 degrees is right here, and that is going to be 3 pi fourths. A negative 120 degrees, we're going this direction. That is going to be right here. And that is going to be, because it's a negative angle, we're going to have negative radian here. So this is going to be a negative 2 pi thirds. C, 330 degrees is going to be right there. And that is going to be 11 pi 6. Okay. Next section. For each of these, we want to think about what quadrant these are going to be in. So if I am going to be doing this, what we want to remember is if this is 11th, which is not a nice, one of those nice points on the unit circle that we're used to seeing, this is pi. And since I'm dealing with 11ths, this is going to be like 11 pi 11ths, which means I'm going to be here in quadrant 3. And just so you understand, when they say the terminal side, when we draw an angle, we start with our initial side on the positive x-axis, and then our terminal side would be like that. That's what they're talking about, terminal side. So this is initial, and this is terminal. So negative 330 degrees. So I'm going this direction. And so going to here is negative 180, going to here is negative 270. So I am going to end up in quadrant 1. For 19 pi halves, what I would do is figure out how many whole pies. So 2 goes into 19 9 times, which is 18 with 1 left over. So 9 pi halves. All of my odd pies are going to be here. And then I'm going to be going 1 pi half beyond, which is going to put me here. So for this one, I'm not going to say a quadrant. I'm going to say that I'm going to end up on the negative y-axis. You want to tell me which axis, but you also want to tell me if it's the positive or the negative. Number 4. So we want to find the exact value. So I'm going to do the same thing here. 3 goes into 23. It goes in, let's see, 7 times, which is going to be a 21 with 2 left over. So I'm really looking at 7 and 2 pi thirds. So 7 pi is going to be here. And then I need to go 2 pi thirds beyond, which is going to end up putting me, let me do it in purple here, right here. And so this point is going to be a 1/2 comma negative root 3 halves. So my final answer sign is your y, so it's going to be a negative root 3 halves. B, secant 3 pi fourths. So first off, the reciprocal of secant is cosine. So let's first figure out where the cosine of 3 pi fourths is and what that is. So 3 pi fourths is going to be right here. The coordinates of that's going to be negative root 2 halves, comma, root 2 halves. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of my x coordinate because my cosine is going to be, let me write it here in red, a negative root 2 over 2. So my cosecant is going to be the reciprocal. And I want to rationalize, so I'm going to multiply top and bottom by root 2. I'm going to end up getting negative 2 root 2 over 2, and then a 2 from the top and bottom can simplify to a 1, and I end up with a negative root 2 as my answer. On C, 3 pi halves is right down here. The coordinates of that is 0, negative 1. And remember, tangent is y over x. So I'm going to have negative 1 over 0. Do not leave it like that. That is undefined. Pi is right here. The coordinates of that is going to be negative 1 comma 0. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So the sine of pi is 0. So the cosecant of pi is the reciprocal, which is going to be 1 over 0, which is again undefined. On letter E, secant. So secant of a negative 11 pi fourths. Let me just go, 4 goes into 11. It goes in 2 times, which is 8 with 3 left over. So I'm really looking at 2 and 3 pi fourths. That's what I'm really looking at. So 2 pi would be here, positive or negative, but I am going negative. So the rest of the direction I'm going for the other 3/4 is going to be this direction. And so again, I'll do it in purple. This point right here is where I'm going to be. And the coordinates of that point, negative root 2 halves, comma, negative root 2 halves. And the secant is again going to be the reciprocal of my cosine. And so I'm going to take a negative 2 over root 2. And I already cleaned this up before. When I multiply by root 2, I end up with a negative 2 root 2 over 2. Again, the 2's cancel. And I get a negative root 2 as my answer. Tangent of 930 degrees for something like this, I want to take this and keep subtracting 360 until I get to where I want to be. So 930 minus 360 is 570. Okay, I'm trying to get it from 0 to 360. So I'm going to subtract another 360. And when I do, I get 210 degrees. So I am going to be right here. The coordinates of that point is a negative root 3 halves, comma, a negative 1 half. The tangent, I'm going to take my y over x. So I'm going to have a negative 1 half over a negative root 3 halves. I'm going to end up multiplying by the reciprocal. Let me just zoom in here. So when I multiply by the reciprocal, instead of dividing by negative root 3 over 2, I'm going to multiply by negative 2 over root 3. Okay. So when I do that, my 2's are going to cancel out. And I'm going to get a negative, actually a positive because it's a negative over negative, positive 1 over root 3. I rationalize that, multiply top and bottom by root 3, and I get a root 3 over 3 as my final answer. On letter G, secant of 180 degrees. Okay, I'm here. This is going to be a negative 1 comma 0. Secant is a reciprocal of cosine. So the cosine of 180 degrees is negative 1. And when I take the reciprocal of a negative 1, I get negative 1. for cotangent of 135, that's going to be right here. And that is a negative root 2 halves, comma, root 2 halves. Cotangent is going to be x over y. And I'm going to have a negative root 2 over 2 over a root 2 over 2. And that's really just a negative 1. On number 5, find the exact value for our sine of theta being 3/5 if it is in quadrant 2. Okay, so it's going to be in quadrant 2. So if I'm drawing let me just here, just putting a triangle here. So, and if my angle, my theta is here, then for my sine, opposite is going to be 3, hypotenuse is 5. If I do Pythagorean, this is going to be a 4, but it's a negative 4 because of where I am in terms of the x in quadrant 2. So my cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse, which is a negative 4/5. My cotangent is going to be the reciprocal of tangent. Okay, remember tangent is y over x, or opposite over adjacent. So my cotangent is going to be x over y, or adjacent over hypotenuse. I'm sorry, adjacent over opposite, which is a negative 4/3. On number 6, we want 2 angles, and we want this in radians from 0, including 0 up to 2 pi, but I'm not including 2 pi. So I'm going 0 up to, but not including 2 pi. Okay, so for the first one, my sine is negative in quadrants 3 and 4. And then I am looking for where my sine is going to be a negative 1/2. And that is going to be here and here. And in terms of radians, this is going to be 7 pi 6 and 11 pi 6. For secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So basically, I really want cosine of the same angle theta. And if the secant is -2, the cosecant would be a negative 1/2. So my cosecant is negative in quadrants 2 and 3. Sorry, my cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and 3. So my secant is negative in 2 and 3. And I basically want to think about where my cosine is a negative 1/2, which is going to be here and here. And this is going to be 2 pi thirds and 4 pi thirds. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So this is really going to be cosine. Theta is 1 over root 2. And that cleans up to cosine theta being a root 2 over 2 when I rationalize. Now, my cosine is positive in quadrants 1 and 4. So this is where I'm going to be. And I want where my cosine is a root 2 halves, which is going to be here, here, and here. So this is going to be pi force. And the other one's going to be 7 pi force. And that's the end of the video for the first worksheet, which is the no calculator.